At my son's birthday dinner, I lifted the crystal glass he'd insisted I drink from, smiled at him across the candles, and pretended to swallow. He went pale so fast I could see the lie drain out of him like water. What he didn't know was that I'd already read the message from the unknown number, already seen the pills, already decided how this night would end for him. My name is Meredith. I'm 69 years old, a grandmother of 4, and the sort of woman people underestimate because I carry hard candy in my purse and thank the bus driver. Today's story begins at 3:07 p.m. with my phone buzzing in the hollow quiet of my kitchen. Unknown number. Don't go to your son's birthday party, Meredith. You will be. The message stopped there. No period. No threat spelled out, just those 3 words dragging their nails across my spine. You will be. I stared at them while the oven beeped that the lemon bars were done, while the kettle hissed and clicked off. Outside, a pair of teenagers argued about fireworks in the alley, their voices bouncing off brick. Across the table sat the gift I'd wrapped in navy paper for my son, a vintage watch he'd once admired in a photo of his grandfather. The silver hands shimmered under the lamp, stubbornly dignified. Whoever texted me knew my name, knew I had a son, knew I'd been invited. The invitation had arrived a week ago in a family group chat, all balloons and exclamation points. Brian. Big 40 tonight. 6:30 sharp at the house. Dress comfy. Mom, I'm making your favorite, ginger tonic. Ginger tonic. I'd raised that boy on chamomile and honesty. Ginger tonic felt like a performance. Still, I told myself not to read into it. I have 2 other children, Lila and Matthew, and they've learned that I prefer clear calendars and direct speech. Brian, though, he likes things glossy, curated. He remembers to take photos and forgets to listen. Another buzz. Same unknown number. If you go, do not drink what he gives you. Watch his hands. Watch his hands. There's a kind of advice that turns your bones cold. Not the dramatic sort you see in movies, the life or death shout. No, the quiet kind. The kind that suggests someone has already seen the scene you're walking into. I called the number, of course. It rang once and went dead. I texted back, "Who is this?" and watched the 3 dots appear and vanish like a breath someone couldn't catch. Nothing else came. I took the lemon bars out and set them to cool, my hands steady the way they had been the morning I carried twins out of a tornado shelter in '87. Panic has never served me. Plans do. I'm a retired bookkeeper who once balanced a machine shop's ledgers with nothing but a pencil and the lunch hour. I'm the woman who tracked a $19 error through 6 months of paperwork because the numbers didn't feel right. My life has been a long conversation with the truth, and the truth was this: an unknown number had warned me not to go, and I was going anyway. Why? Because sometimes you learn more by walking into a room than by standing on the porch imagining it. I wore a simple navy dress with a cardigan and comfortable shoes. You don't go to war in heels. I slipped the vintage watch into its box, tied the ribbon into a neat flat knot, and tucked it into a tote with the lemon bars. On my way out, I paused by the mirror. My hair has gone white in an honest way, not glamorous, not tragic. It was a kind of flag I'd stopped trying to lower. My reflection looked like a woman who could be trusted with a secret or a storm. The rideshare pulled up at 6:05. The driver was a young woman with braids and a small silver stud in her nose. You headed to the Grove? She asked, glancing at the destination on her phone. The Grove, that was what the realtor had called Brian's cul-de-sac with its tidy trees and eager lawns. I nodded, watching the neighborhoods pass, brick to clapboard to stone, like pages turning. As we turned onto Bryan Street, I felt the first tug of strangeness. The house was bright, music spilled through the open windows, and there were already cars on both sides of the road. But nobody was on the porch, nobody came to greet me, and when I texted here, the typing dots didn't appear. I let myself in with the key he'd given me last Christmas, just in case. Just in case. Interesting phrase. Mom. Brian's voice carried from the kitchen, cheerful and slightly too loud. Right on time. He's handsome in the way he's always been tall, with our family's square jaw softened by his wife's careful cooking. He was in a crisp button-down, sleeves rolled to the elbow. He crossed the room with a practiced smile, kissing my cheek and plucking the toad off my shoulder as if he were being filmed doing it. "You made the lemon bars," he said brightly. "Perfect." We set up a dessert table in the den. He didn't ask about the watch. He didn't look for it either, which told me he knew it was there. Sabrina appeared behind him like a stage cue, lipstick impeccable, dress that said effortless and cost a week's pension. "Meredith," she sang, "you look lovely, come in, come in. Let me take your sweater." She hugged me, the way people do when they want you to feel embraced and slightly pinned. Her perfume was all white flowers and warning. "Drink," Brian said, already reaching for a highball glass at the bar cart by the island. "I made your ginger tonic the way you like, no sugar, lots of lemon. Keeps your stomach settled." "I'm fine with water," I said lightly, "because you don't step on the first trap you see." "Oh, come on. One isn't going to hurt," he laughed, tossing 2 ice cubes into the glass and juggling bottles with the casual confidence of a man who believes he's charming when his hands are busy. "Besides, it's your favorite. Watch his hands." He added a squeeze of something from a dark dropper bottle before he saw me looking. The movement was quick, a magician's flourish. When he realized where my eyes had fallen, he smiled like a boy caught taking an extra cookie. "Bitters," he said. "Digestive." "Sabrina's on a craft cocktail kick." "Just a splash," Sabrina chimed in, her tone the exact weight of a silk scarf. "So good for you." The glass slid toward me across the marble, the single wedge of candied ginger glistening like bait. Highlights from the recessed lighting hopped across the surface of the drink. Somewhere in the living room people cheered. Someone had arrived with balloons. The whole house smelled faintly of rosemary and something sweet, maybe the glazed carrots Sabrina was famous for. I wrapped my hand around the glass, but didn't lift it. I have arthritis in 2 fingers of my right hand, and when the weather changes I feel it. Tonight the ache tightened like a reminder. Take your time. Think. "Where's Lila?" I asked, turning away from the bar, scanning faces. "Traffic," Brian said too quickly. "You know the bridges. She'll be late." Matthew's helping park cars. I set the glass on a coaster, ceramic, floral, beside my purse. "I'll wait till we're all together." He laughed again, a half-octave high. "Don't be dramatic, Mom. It's my 40th, not a Senate hearing." In the den, a friend of his I only half recognized, Zach maybe, was folding napkins and talking about real estate. On the buffet, I saw things I recognized from my own donated boxes, serving platters of mine, my mother's embroidered tablecloth pressed and laid out like an apology. Sabrina caught me looking. "It photographs well," she said, touching the tablecloth with a fingertip. "Has texture. History," I corrected. From the hallway, a burst of laughter and the thud of a balloon popping. I smelled cloves. I also smelled something else from the bar, a bitter, chalky hint underneath the ginger and lemon, like a memory I couldn't quite place. In another life, I'd have chalked it up to age and the tricks noses play, but the text sat like a pebble in my shoe. "Don't drink what he gives you." "Give me just a minute," I said, lifting the tote with the lemon bars, pretending surprise at its weight. "I want to set these out in the kitchen so the crust doesn't sweat." Sabrina waved me off, already fielding a question about the child's play area. Brian turned to a man in a blazer and began speaking in a low voice he thought was private. I slipped down the hallway past the guest bathroom. It smelled of eucalyptus and hotel. I ducked into the pantry, a long, narrow closet off the kitchen that Sabrina called a butler's pantry when she was feeling fancy. If you want to know about a household, don't look at the living room. Look at the pantry. It's where people put what they don't want you to see on the counters. Top shelf, bulk rice, labeled in Sabrina's handwriting. Lower shelves, neat rows of sparkling water, artisanal crackers I couldn't pronounce, a tin of loose tea I'd given them last Christmas still sealed. Far in the back, behind a row of tonic bottles, I saw a white pharmacy bag, the kind they give you for medication, with the fold hard-creased and the top tucked down. I've never been a snoop. I am, however, a mother. I slid the bag forward with a single finger. Inside, a small orange pill bottle with a child-proof cap and Sabrina's name on the label. New pickup. 2 days ago. The medication name was long and familiar. One of those prescriptions they give for situational anxiety that doubles as a powerful sedative when paired with alcohol. My stomach dropped. My fingers did not shake. I took out my phone and snapped 2 photos, label, pill count. I did not touch the pills. I returned the bottle to the bag to the shelf, turned it slightly so that its original dust smudge lined up with the one on the wood. Then I stepped back, the way you do when you leave a sleeping child and don't want them to stir. From the kitchen came the clatter of ice and the low, pleasant hum of casual betrayal. When I came out, Brian was at the bar again, polishing a glass with a cloth like a bartender in a movie. He looked up and gave me that grin he uses when he wants to disarm a situation with boyishness. "There you are," he said. "Your drink's getting warm." "It has ice," I said. He lifted the glass and put it in my hand himself. His fingers were warm, too warm, and I thought of the unknown number telling me to watch his hands. I also thought of a summer night 20 years ago when those same hands learned how to hold a newborn without fear, his face wet and astonished when he realized he'd made something bigger than himself. People change, but hands remember. "Speech," someone shouted from the living room. "Birthday speech." Brian laughed. "In a minute." Then to me, quieter, "Just a sip, Mom." For me. It's a simple phrase, and it has led people into more trouble than any map. I lifted the glass, brought it to my lips, and let the rim touch, let the cold kiss the skin, let the scent of ginger rise, but I did not drink. I tipped it just enough that it would look right from 10 feet away. If you learn anything in your 70s, it's that performance can be protection. "Delicious," I said, and set the glass down on the exact spot he'd placed it earlier. "Perfect," he said, relief flashing across his eyes like sunlight through blinds. "Can I use your bathroom?" I asked. "Of course," he said lightly, waving toward the hall. "Guest bath." In the guest bath, I closed the door and slid the lock, listening to the soft metallic click. I turned on the tap and let the water run, making the kind of cover noise I've used since I was a teenager and learned that privacy is something you sometimes have to build with sound. From my purse, I took a clean travel-size plastic bag I'd used for snacks on the bus, peeled it open, and pulled out a square of paper towel. I damped the towel slightly under the tap, then went back into the hall with the bag tucked between my wrist and sleeve, the way you carry a secret in plain sight. At the bar, the glass-weighted rhymed with a tiny lip print I'd left deliberately. I pressed the paper towel gently to the rim like a woman wiping condensation from a glass, then touched it lightly to the surface of the drink. I slid the towel into the bag, sealed it, and put it in my purse below the knitting needles. Then I took a different coaster from the stack, set it where my glass had been, and moved my glass onto it. It was a meaningless change unless you were watching to see if the glass stayed in the same place. I wanted to see who noticed. "Mom," Sabrina said, appearing at my shoulder with a smile so white it could have guided ships. "Lila just texted. She's parking. Should we hold dinner?" "Hold dessert," I said mildly. "Let me put the lemon bars out in the garage fridge so they set." "I can," she began. "It's no trouble." In the garage, it was cooler. Brian had hung his tools in a neat line, every wrench on its hook. A folding table stood in the corner with a stack of papers and a heavy black pen laid out on a blue folder. At first, I thought it was another of Sabrina's staging projects, until I saw my name peeking from beneath the pen. Meredith A. Hale. I didn't touch them. Not yet. I leaned in and read. I learned the font of betrayal. On top lay a living will template with blanks waiting for my initials. Beneath it a durable power of attorney document that gave Brian control of medical and financial decision-making in the event of incapacity. Someone had highlighted incapacity with optimistic yellow. Under that, a printed draft and signed, unnotarized, but ready of a will that left my house, my savings, my little blue car to my beloved son Brian Hale, with a single line for small keepsakes to be distributed at his discretion. My other children were mentioned once, in passing, as if they were cousins we'd lost touch with. For a moment, the cold in the garage felt like a mercy. My breath came short. Not because I didn't know something was wrong that had been clear since the unknown number, but because seeing the shape of it made it bigger. When my husband died, Brian's father, I learned that grief and paperwork go hand in hand like old enemies shaking on a truce. I also learned that documents can be weapons depending on who holds the pen. In the right light, a signature can look like surrender. Mom? Brian's voice floated out from the kitchen, light, casual. Everything okay? Just fine, I called back. Do you want the lemon bars cut now or after dinner? After. Sabrina sang. They look so pretty whole. I slid the folder's top page just enough to see the letterhead. A mobile notary service. Appointment time, 7:45 p.m. The name below it, someone I didn't know. The instruction line, signer must be alert, willing, and aware. Alert, willing, and aware. I almost laughed. Almost. The garage door eased open and Matthew stepped in from the driveway, cheeks red from the cold. He's 37, quieter than his brother, built like his grandfather and happiest when repairing something nobody else had the patience to fix. He saw me and blinked. Hey, Ma, he said softly. You hiding? I might be, I said. He glanced at the table, then at me. His eyes changed. Matthew has his father's eyes, blue-gray, honest to a fault. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the driveway as if words might be easier to find in the brake lights. You see this? I asked, tilting my head toward the folder. He swallowed. I told him it was a bad idea, he said finally, too fast. I told him not to spring it on you tonight. Spring what? He rubbed the back of his neck the way he did when he was 8 and trying to figure out how to say he'd broken a neighbor's window. He said it was just paperwork, Matthew said. Sabrina said it was a good time because you'd be in a good mood. In a good mood, I repeated. And how would they make sure of that, Matthew? He looked at the floor, then at my face, and shame rose in his cheeks like a tide. He said it was just a little something to calm you. Like for the dentist. He said Lila and I would get our share eventually, that this was just about making things clear. Anger is hot for most people. For me, it goes cold. I felt it slide into place like steel. Where's Lila? I asked. 2 blocks down, he said. She's furious. Good, I said. Keep her that way. It'll keep her sharp. He blinked. Ma, I told him. I put my hand on his arm, the way I did when he was small and worried a storm was coming. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. From the kitchen, a voice I didn't recognize, female, brisk, said, I'm the notary. Where would you like me to set up? I looked at the folder again. The pen waited like a snake curled on sun-warmed rock. Don't touch any of it, I told Matthew. And don't drink anything you didn't pour yourself. That goes for Lila too. He nodded, eyes wide. Back in the kitchen, the notary was setting up at the end of the island, flipping through her journal. She was younger than I expected, hair in a tight bun, the kind of woman who takes her work seriously because the world has taught her she must. She looked up and gave me a professional smile. Happy birthday, she said to Brian. Then, to me, you must be Meredith. I must, I said. Mom, Brian said gently, fingertips tapping the bar like a drummer on a cliff's edge. We thought we'd take advantage of everyone being here to get some things in order. Everyone? I asked, looking around. Is Lila here? Parking, Sabrina said, appearing with a tray of olives like a peace offering. She'll be in a second. Then we'll wait, I said, and lifted my glass again, letting the room watch me bring it to my lips. I let the liquid touch my mouth. I didn't drink. Brian relaxed by a millimeter. The unknown number vibrated in my hand again. Unknown number. Coat closet. Top shelf. Black envelope. Now. My heart didn't change its rhythm. I slipped down the hallway and opened the coat closet. Sabrina's coats were hung an inch apart like gowns in a boutique. On the top shelf, between 2 storage bins, sat a flat black envelope with no label. I slid it out, opened the flap, and found a stack of glossy photos. Not criminal photos, not the scandalous kind. Just sad ones. The office of a cheap storefront. A door with a sign that read, in block letters, Golden Gardens Elder Care Planning. Another of a business card, a predatory lawyer whose billboard I'd seen on the highway, promising worry-free transfers. The rest were screenshots, texts between Sabrina and a number labeled GG intake. They used words like expedite and capacity, and we can save thousands if we move now. In one, Sabrina asked if I needed to be present for the asset retitling, and the reply was a cheerful no, not if you already have durable power of attorney. In another, Brian asked how long a sedative would be detectable, and someone answered, depends on metabolism. Best not to mention. I stared at the photos until my eyes burned. Then I slid them back into the envelope and into my purse. Who are you? I typed to the unknown number. A moment passed. Then, someone who was asked to do a bad thing and said no. Don't drink. Prove you didn't. Then let him pour again. Prove I didn't. The advice was so specific it felt like a hand on my shoulder. Meredith, the notary called down the hall. We can get started with preliminaries if you'd like to review language. I walked back into the kitchen, the envelope a weight against my hip. Why the rush? I asked, mild as mint tea. No rush, Sabrina said quickly. Just convenience. We're all busy. You know how it is. I do, I said. And I also know what convenience looks like when it's wearing a mask. Mom, Brian said, softer, coaxing. Don't make this dramatic. It's simple. It protects you. I picked up the glass he'd prepared and held it up between us, the lemon while throwing an innocent little halo on the granite. Does this protect me too? Don't be ridiculous, he said, and there was the first crack, irritation, brittle and thin. I set the glass down deliberately and took my purse off my shoulder. From it, I pulled out a small strip of paper and a capped cotton swab from the little first aid kit I carry leftover from testing a grandchild's science kit a year ago. Litmus is a funny thing. It won't tell you the name of what's there, but it will tell you if something should not be. I dipped the swab into my glass and touched it to the strip. It changed in a way that a simple tonic should not. I didn't say what it meant. I just held it up, and the kitchen went very quiet. Science experiment? Sabrina said with a laugh that tried too hard. In a way, I said. The notary cleared her throat, professional neutrality cracking into unease. If there's any concern about capacity being artificially impaired, I cannot proceed, she said. It violates. There's no concern, Brian cut in quickly. None. Mom's being theatrical. Am I? I asked and took out my phone. I pulled up the photo of the pill bottle and enlarged Sabrina's name, the prescription, the date. Then I laid the photo down beside the pen on the blue folder and watched the color drain from Sabrina's face. You went through our things? She whispered, genuine outrage finally puncturing the performance. In our home. In our pantry, I said. Which I paid for. Which holds a medication that is none of my business unless it finds its way into my glass. Sabrina pressed her lips together and looked at Brian, her face flickering through a handful of expressions before landing on the one she uses for difficult caterers. Mom, Brian said carefully. You're making a mistake. You're misreading all of this. The front door opened and Lila walked in, hair a storm, eyes sharper than a courtroom. She took one look at the table, the notary, the folder, and then at me. She set her keys down without breaking eye contact. What did you do? She asked her brother, her voice low and steady, the way our fathers had been when a hammer slipped but didn't break a toe. It's just paperwork, Brian said. It's about protecting Mom's interests. Sabrina's been doing research. It's time to consolidate. Consolidate? Lila repeated. You picked tonight, your birthday, to stage a consolidation? With a notary? With drinks. It's called efficiency, Lila, Sabrina snapped. You should try it sometime instead of losing every argument in semantics. Matthew came in behind my daughter, eyes on me, one small nod like a covert signal. He stood beside Lila, which counted for something even if it came late. The notary closed her journal. If there's conflict, I'll need to leave, she said. I won't be part of. You're not going anywhere, Brian said quickly, not to her but to the situation, to the feeling of control sliding. Mom, look at me. Do you really think I'd ever do anything to hurt you? I looked at him then. Really looked. At the lines around his eyes the years had put there, at the softness around his mouth he tried to erase with the right beard length, at the hands that couldn't hold still without a glass to polish or a pen to tap. He was my boy, and he was not a boy anymore, and both truths hurt. I think you want what you want, I said. And I think you're used to getting it when you smile. Then don't make me the bad guy, he said, and for a second I saw the little boy who hated being caught, hated the timeout bench more than he loved the toy that sent him there. Sign the papers, Mom. It's easier. It's better for everyone. For everyone? Lila said, heat blooming in her cheeks. Or just for you? For me, Brian said, tired of the dance, and I almost appreciated the honesty. It's okay to say it. I'm the one who's here. I'm the one who deals with the bills and the leaks and the calls at midnight when her hip hurts or the alarm goes off because she forgot to shut a window. You two swoop in like heroes on holidays and then leave me to handle reality. Why should I wait to inherit a mess when I can manage it now? The room held its breath. Even Sabrina looked at him, surprised by the nakedness of it. Outside, children shouted and a dog barked and the world rolled on, indifferent to a family shifting its weight on a fault line. What if, I said, voice even, the mess you inherit tonight is not mine? Before he could answer, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, and a new text from the unknown number slid onto the screen. He swapped your glass. He put the stronger one by the sink. Make him drink what he poured for you. For the first time that evening, I let my hands shake. Not much. Just enough that Brian's eyes softened. Mom, he said, stepping toward me, hand out as if to take the glass away, as if to save me from what he'd done. Let me. No, I said, and my voice went flat as the moment demanded. Let's toast. Sabrina laughed, relieved, certain again of the script. Yes, a toast. Before dinner. I walked to the sink where, sure enough, a second glass sat half hidden behind the blender. Its lemon was sliced thinner, its ginger darker, its ice melted to a ring of intention. I picked it up, turned, and held it toward my son. For 40, I said. For the man you choose to be after tonight. Mom, he said slowly, eyes flicking from the notary to Lila to Matthew, and then to the glass in my hand. He didn't reach for it. Drink, I said. Silence thickened. Then, to my left, the notary cleared her throat. If this is coercive, she said, to the room, to her sense of liability, I really must. It's not coercive, I said without looking away from Brian. It's clarity. He took the glass. He lifted it. He hesitated. And in the half-second that hesitation cracked him open, I saw panic, calculation, indignation, fear, all the faces of a man who just realized the mirror works both ways. He smiled. That old, charming, boyish smile that once won goldfish at summer fairs and girls' hearts at sophomore dances. To family, he said. To truth, I said. The glass paused at his mouth. He looked at me over the rim. Then, from the front door, another voice entered, a new one, brisk and familiar in a way that made the hair on my arms lift. Am I late? A woman called, stepping in with a leather bag and a folder. Who's the signer? I got a call that the first notary might balk, so they asked me to come as backup. I'm an attorney as well. I can clarify things. Sabrina exhaled like a prayer answered. Brian lowered the glass without drinking. Lila turned toward the woman with a look I recognized from the year she debated in high school, the look that means she has waited her whole life for this fight. I set my purse on the counter, unzipped it, and laid the black envelope between the notary's journal and the blue folder. I didn't push it toward anyone. I let its weight sit where everyone could see it. And just before anyone could speak, my phone lit up again. Unknown number. I'm outside. Knock 3 times on the pantry door if you want me to come in. Who are you, really? I typed with my thumb, watching my son watch the glass he hadn't drunk from. A beat. Then, the caterer's nephew. Hired to doctor your drink for $400. I didn't. I've been watching. Choose when to light the fuse. I looked at my family. At the documents. At the notary backing slowly toward the door, instincts intact. At the second attorney opening her mouth to rearrange the night into something smoother. At my son holding a glass he'd poured for me and couldn't swallow himself. I lifted my hand and rapped on the pantry door. 1, 2, 3. Behind the door, someone took a breath. And the fuse, at last, touched flame. The boy I raised flinched from the glass he'd meant for me, and that, more than any test strip or text message, told the truth. He trusted his smile more than his conscience. A room full of witnesses watched him decide whether to believe he could still get away with it. The pantry door clicked. A young man stepped out carrying a canvas messenger bag and a look that said he was too old for this and too young to know what to do with it. He wore a server's black shirt and a name tag that read Nico in all caps. "Ma'am," he said to me first, respectful study. Then, to the room, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here because trouble was invited." Sabrina drew herself up, scandalized. "Who is this?" "The caterer's nephew," I said, reading the new shape of the evening like a ledger. "The one who texted me." Nico nodded. "I didn't touch your drink," he said. "I didn't add anything to anything. But I was asked to. I have the texts. I have the cash they tried to pay me. I have the dropper they handed me, but I filled it with water and handed it back because I wasn't going to be part of this." Brian laughed too loudly. "This is absurd." "Sabrina, what is this?" "Who?" "Don't," Nico said, soft and warning in the way you speak to a dog before a fence breaks. "Don't pretend you don't know me. You sent me a thumbs up when I said I got the errand. You told me to make it easy for her so you wouldn't have to fight." All the color drained out of Brian's face, not in a dramatic swoop but in a careful fade, like someone lowering a dimmer switch. The backup attorney, sleek, confident, wearing the sort of heels that can stab if they must, clicked her bag shut and measured the room. "Let's pause," she said into the stunned air, as if we were in a seminar and not a hurricane. "Everyone take a breath. I am counsel. If legal instruments are going to be discussed, we should do so calmly and with clarity. I'm Miss Collier." The first notary, Ponytail, principled, had another name, but in my head I'd already started calling her Ethics. Ethics slid her journal back into her bag like a person she wanted to keep safe from a building that smelled of smoke. "Miss Collier," I said, "are you affiliated with Golden Gardens Elder Care Planning?" She didn't blink. She'd be good at poker. "I consult with a number of elder services." I put the black envelope on the counter and slid out the photo of the storefront with the Golden Garden sign, then the screenshot of her business card, the same serif font, the same optimistic tagline. I lay them side by side with the appointment sheet from the garage and the photo of Sabrina's pill bottle. "I don't need a seminar," I said. "I need everyone to see the picture." Lila held up her phone and, without taking her eyes off Brian, tapped a button. "Recording," she announced. "For everyone's protection." "Turn that off," Sabrina snapped. Lila didn't even look her way. "No." Nico laid his messenger bag on the island with a clatter, unzipped it, and pulled out a sandwich-sized bag with a dropper bottle inside and a wad of cash held together by an elastic. He also produced a phone, the cheap kind that lives on prepaid plans and promises no questions. "This is the number that texted me," he said, showing the burner screen, a thread from B40 balloons with phrases like, "Do it at 6:45" and "She likes ginger." Then he dropped his gaze to the glass in Brian's hand. "He won't drink," Nico said. "That was the rule. Don't taste, don't sip, don't let her stall." Brian placed the glass on the counter like it was made of thin ice, and he could hear it cracking. "Mom," Matthew said quietly, "I'm sorry. I didn't know about this part." "You know now," I said. "I try to stop it," he said, voice thick. "He said it was just a little help." He said. I know what he said. I also know what he meant. Brian turned to me suddenly, as if we were alone in a hallway and the rest of the world were a set we could sweep away if we just chose the right line. "This is out of control," he said. "You're letting strangers walk into our house and accuse us of crimes." "Over what?" "A misunderstanding." "You hired a stranger to drug your mother," Lila said, calm as a courtroom winter. "That's not a misunderstanding. That's a felony with excellent posture." Sabrina stepped in, palms out, voice dipped in honey. "No one was going to hurt anyone," she said. "Meredith, we love you. We wanted to help you make good decisions. Sometimes you resist what's best. Sometimes you say you'll handle things and then you don't." "Like what?" I asked. "Like selling the house," she said, eyes flashing victory as if she'd finally found the card she'd been holding. "You promised. Twice. We found a buyer. The market shifted. We're bleeding money every month for maintenance on a place that needs repairs you can't pay for. My house is paid for, I said. You know that. Because you tried to retitle it behind my back and Golden Gardens told you you'd need my consent or a court order. MS. Collier's head ticked a millimeter, the smallest of tells. Ethics cleared her throat again. Miss Hale, she said to me, ignoring Sabrina's splutter. May I ask you a question? Yes. Are you under the influence of anything besides a reasonable amount of anger? No. Are you signing anything tonight? No. Then my work here is done. She pulled a business card from her wallet and handed it to me like an anchor. If anyone pressures you after I leave, call me and I will refer you to protective services and counsel. Ms. Collier bristled. That will not be necessary. Ethics looked at her without blinking. I think it might. Brian's fingers twitched toward the glass by the sink, then away, as if magnetized and repelled in the same breath. He looked at Nico, at the bag with the dropper, at the cash. I didn't give you that money, he said. Your wife did, Nico said. In your kitchen. With you standing there telling me not to be squeamish. Sabrina's smile turned to ceramic. You little. Careful, Lila said. Sabrina swallowed a word she wanted to use and tried to find one YouTube would approve of. You liar. Nico didn't flinch. There's a camera over your stove, he said, pointing, eyes still on Brian. For your cooking videos. I don't know if it was on. But if it was, it saw everything. Your hands. The dropper. The bag. The house inhaled. Its technology remembered what the people wanted to forget. Brian, I said, we're going to make this simple. You are going to sit down. We are going to call the police. You are going to tell them the truth. Or I am going to press play on anything in this house that can play, and the people you invited for your birthday will have a very interesting show. You can't do this, Sabrina hissed. I can, I said. Because you already did. Ms. Collier lifted her chin. I advise against calling the police, she said smoothly. Elder protection cases are complex. Families are messy. Once you involve authorities, you lose control. That warning is not for my benefit, I said, and took out my phone. It's for yours. Brian stepped between me and the island. His face had gone slack in that particular way certain men manage, the way that says, if I look soft enough, maybe you'll forget I am hard. Mom, he said, voice dropping. You don't want to do this. You're right, I said. I don't want to. I want to rewind. Failing that, I want the truth. I'm your son, he said. Tonight, I said, you're a man holding a glass he refuses to drink. He glanced at his friends in the living room who were pretending not to watch, pretending their phones weren't already out, pretending the music still playing from the speaker meant something other than a soundtrack to a story they'd tell later. Fine, he said at last, defiant as a teenager at a kitchen table long ago. Call. Tell them I tried to, what? Calm you down? You think they'll arrest me? I'll say you're paranoid. I'll say you've been confused. I'll say you've been mixing up dates and names. That's what they expect, right? From someone your age. Don't, Matthew said sharply. I won't, I told my second son. And then, to Brian, I keep records. You know that. You think I don't have years of messages where you asked me to move money, to cash out accounts, to lend you funds you never repaid because you forgot? You think I don't have copies of every document you dropped off with a yellow flag on the signature line? I am old, Brian. I am not new. He folded his arms. He had never liked it when I spoke to him as if he could be held to account by the past. I dialed 3 numbers. Before I could press the last, a hand covered my screen. Not Brian's. Not Sabrina's. Miss Collier's. Meredith, she said, dropping pretense, speaking to me the way professionals speak to one another when everyone else is a client or a problem. I'm going to ask you for 2 minutes. Not to spin, not to press. 2 minutes to explain what your son has scheduled and the legal fiction he has been sold. I looked at her hand on my phone until she removed it. 2 minutes, I said. And then we call. She nodded once. The documents outside, she said, wouldn't hold the way they think. Any will signed under duress is a will that dies in court. Any power of attorney obtained with sedatives is a path to an orange jumpsuit. Golden Garden sells faster than light solutions to families who think probate is a word you can beat if you get clever. They're wrong. If you want to protect assets, you do it with time and good planning, not with cocktails and highlights. Then why are you here? Lila asked. Because they pay, she said, not proud, not ashamed. And because sometimes I can keep them from doing the worst thing before they do it. By sending 2 notaries and a dropper? I asked. She exhaled. I didn't send the dropper. I came because I suspected they would try something like this. I wanted to stop them. I also wanted their retainer. I am not a saint. Congratulations on knowing the difference, I said. Brian laughed once, a bark that wasn't humor. So you're the hero now? Miss Collier didn't even look at him. You hired me because you wanted a tool, she said. I declined to be used as a weapon. Sabrina made an offended noise like a tea kettle. Ethics slid me another card. If you decide to create a trust or advance directive later, she said, do it with someone who treats you like you're alive. I am, I said. Vexingly so. The front door opened again. Bluster. Cold. A neighbor's wind followed someone in. It was my neighbor from across the street, Jean, practical as a screwdriver, drawn by the noise and the text I'd sent her in the rideshare. If something feels off, come over at 7:30 and ring if you don't hear laughter. She didn't ring. She walked in like a woman who'd been asked to carry a heavy box. You good? Jean asked. Getting there, I said. Jean looked at the table, the notaries, the documents, the glass. She looked at my face. Her mouth set. You want a witness? She asked in the tone of someone who once ran a small-town newsroom and didn't mind ending a career with a story. I do, I said. Then witness this, Lila said, pointing to Brian's glass. He won't drink it. Sabrina's patience gave way the way a cake collapses under its own sugar. No one is drinking anything, she said. We're done with this circus. Agreed, I said. Everyone put your hands on the counter where I can see them. It was a ridiculous line. Somehow it worked. Maybe because I said it like I meant it. Maybe because for the first time that night I sounded like my husband had sounded the day he told a crew to kill a machine that was about to eat a man's hand, loud enough to cut through panic, sure enough to make obedience feel like common sense. Hands appeared. Some shaking, some steady. Not mine. Not Lila's. Sabrina's fingers trembled, but that could have been rage. Brian's hands were blank as the papers he wanted signed. Now, I said. We're going to test both glasses. Miko slid a small strip of multipurpose test paper across the island, another from some restaurant kit he carried, the kind that tells you if a surface was cleaned with bleach or with hope. It wasn't forensic science, but it was a start. He held the strips like a card sharp who's tired of other people's games. Ethics leaned in, interested despite herself. Miss Collier, too. Lila filmed. Jean held her phone at the ready to dial. We dipped the first strip into my original glass, the one Brian had made theatrically in front of me. The colors shifted, not just for lemon and ginger and bitters. Not definitive. Suggestive. We dipped the second strip into the glass by the sink, the one the unknown number had warned me about. It blazed a different set of colors altogether. I'm not a chemist. You don't need to be to tell water from a storm. I can't say what's in it, Nico said. But it's not a mocktail. Sabrina burst. This is ridiculous, she cried, all pretense gone. You people are going to ruin Brian's birthday because you don't understand how to make grown-up decisions. Grown-up decisions, Lila repeated, quiet enough to be dangerous. Like drugging your mother-in-law. Sabrina went silent, then did the worst possible thing. She rolled her eyes. I watched 3 of Brian's friends lower their phones like they'd just been told the movie they were filming had a villain after all. Brian exhaled through his nose and reached for the glass. Fine, he said, abrupt. I'll prove it. He lifted it. I didn't stop him. He brought it to his mouth. He didn't drink. He held it just long enough to look like a man in a painting. Then he set it down again. He had never been good at pretending to be braver than he felt. We're done, I said, more tired than triumphant, because this kind of victory does not come with streamers. Brian, step away from the counter. Lila, call. Lila pressed 3 numbers. The sound of them connecting was the most beautiful thing I'd heard all night. While she spoke to the dispatcher, I looked at Matthew. My poor, honest Matthew with a conscience that bruised easily and healed slowly. You can leave if you want, I said to him. No one will think less of you for not wanting to watch. He shook his head. I should have stopped it, he said. I'm staying to see it stopped. Good, I said, and meant it so much my throat hurt. Meredith, Miss Collier said, when the police arrive, they will ask if you want to press charges. I do, I said. Then say so clearly, she said. And then ask for a protective order. If you don't want him to contact you. I looked at my son. Try as I might, I could not stop seeing him at different ages layered over the man, baby asleep in a laundry basket on the porch swing, boy with a knee torn open by a gravel driveway, teenager practicing an apology in the bathroom mirror. Redemption is powerful. It is not owed. Mom, Brian said, just my name and a lifetime in it. You should sit down, I said. He sat. Sabrina stayed standing, arms folded like rope. Miss Collier stepped away to make a call. Ethics waited by the door to leave the second she could justify it. Nico pulled the cash from its elastic and counted aloud, not for greed, but for the record. For 100, he said, and slid it back in the bag like evidence. Keep it, I told him. I don't want it, he said. That's why you should, I said. It should not go back to them. He nodded and tucked it away like an oath. In the lull before sirens, the doorbell rang. Everyone jumped. Jean went to answer it with the authority of a woman who pays her property taxes on time and dares anyone to question her. On the porch stood a cluster of party guests who'd stepped outside to escape discomfort and had come back into a rumor thick enough to sit on. Their faces turned toward the kitchen, hungry and sorry and human. Maybe the kids should go upstairs, Matthew said, eyeing one of Brian's friend's daughters, who was watching from the stairwell with a cat in her arms and an understanding that adults don't know how to behave. You're right, I said. Honey, I called to the girl. Would you like to help me put something safe away? She nodded, serious as a mission, and came down the stairs with the cat like a saint in a painting. I took the glasses, both of them, and handed them to Jean. Put these in the garage fridge, back left, next to the lemon bars, I said. Do not let anyone touch them. Got it, Jean said, and disappeared like a bodyguard who bakes on Sundays. Sabrina lunged. Jean had already gone. Sabrina turned that energy on me instead. You'll regret this, she said almost conversationally, like a woman discussing the weather that always breaks the way she wants. I regret it already, I said. I regret 10,000 things, and none of them are this phone call. Brian rubbed his temple as if a headache had arrived late to a meeting. You could have just signed the papers, he said. You could have made it easy. For whom? I asked. For me, he said, and there it was again, the truth that refuses to wear a coat. I paused long enough to feel it. Not to indulge it. To memorize it. Sometimes, later, the way someone showed you who they are is the only thing that makes sense of what you have to do next. Mom, Matthew said softly. What are you going to do about the will? I mean after. With us. You'll see, I said. Later. You already did something, Lila said, never missing a beat. Didn't you? I smiled at my daughter, my fellow keeper of receipts. I did. Sabrina made a disgusted noise. Of course she did, she said. Because heaven forbid we make a plan that doesn't revolve around her rules. It's my estate, I said. Not a Pinterest board. From the hallway came the sound of feet and quiet authority. 2 officers stepped into the kitchen, a woman with hair pulled back and calm like a shield, and a man whose posture said he had seen most things and still hoped to be surprised by goodness. They looked first at me, then at the notaries, then at the table. They did not touch their radios. They did not assume anything. It was a grace I didn't know to ask for. Evening, the woman officer said. Who called? I did, Lila said, stepping aside so the officer could see me. My mother is the complainant. The woman officer's gaze shifted to mine. Miss Hale. Yes, I said. Tell me what happened, she said. I received a warning from an unknown number at 3:07 p.m. not to drink a beverage my son would offer me at his birthday party, I said, facts front to back like beads on a wire. I came anyway. My son prepared a drink for me. I did not consume it. I discovered a second drink had been prepared with a higher concentration of an unknown substance. I have reason to believe the substance is a sedative prescribed to my daughter-in-law. I have photographs of the prescription bottle, the date, and the label. I have the glasses secured. I have the person who was asked to doctor my drink present with the cash he was given and a text thread with the instructions he received. A notary is present and can confirm she stated she would not proceed if capacity might be impaired. A second attorney arrived, but no documents have been signed. I would like to press charges for attempted poisoning and attempted financial exploitation of an elder. The room held its breath. The officer did not. All right, she said. We're going to separate people for statements. We'll collect the items. We'll ask you to send us the photos. We'll also ask for consent to secure the glasses for testing. Do you consent? Yes, I said. And I'd like to request a temporary protective order to prevent contact once this is in motion. You're using the right words, she said, not unkindly. That helps. Brian stood. This is crazy, he said, and every head turned toward him like flowers toward a sun that burned. She's making this into a crime. He searched for a clean synonym for something dirty. I was trying to keep things smooth. Sit down, the male officer said, his voice the kind of polite that means you don't have to raise it to be obeyed. Brian sat. The woman officer looked at Sabrina. Do you have the prescription Ms. Hale referenced? Sabrina's chin tilted. I don't have to show you anything. Not without a warrant, Ms. Collier inserted smoothly, back in control of her tongue. But my client will comply to the extent required. She's not your client, Lila said. She was, Ms. Collier corrected. Ethics raised a hand. I'm happy to provide my card. I refuse to notarize. The officer nodded. We'll want your statement. She turned back to me. Ms. Hale, are you comfortable while we take statements? Do you need a paramedic to check you just in case? I'm comfortable, I said. But I appreciate the offer. Behind the officers, guests began to murmur quietly, the kind of murmurs that turn into text chains and then cautionary tales told to cousins. Could we move this somewhere else? Sabrina asked, suddenly aware of her life as content. Perhaps the study? No, I said. We'll do it right here. With light. The male officer went to retrieve the glasses from the garage with Jean. The woman officer kept her eyes on Brian and Sabrina the way you keep your eyes on a pot that has already boiled over once. Miss Collier made a call under her breath that sounded a lot like a retainer refund. Ethics wrote, steady and neat. Nico stood beside me, unexpected as backup, solid as one. You handling this? He asked. Yes, I said. And then I'm going to ask you a favor. He arched an eyebrow. What kind? The kind that involves making sandwiches for anyone in this house who hasn't eaten yet and would like to do so without fear. He smiled then, a real one that arrived on his face like morning. That, he said, I can do. He retreated to the kitchen beyond the island and began assembling him on wheat with the quiet competence of someone who has had to feed rooms he did not understand and keep them from biting each other. While statements were taken, Miss Collier approached me with a look that wasn't apology so much as recognition. For what it's worth, she said, you were never going to sign. No, I said. But he didn't know that. He does now, she said. I looked at my son, who sat with his head down, and felt a complicated ache that had nothing to do with victory. He does. You said you already did something, Lila murmured, closer now that the officers had drifted toward the hallway to take Sabrina's statement. What? I moved everything 6 months ago, I said. After your brother called me one too many times asking for short-term loans and hinting about a friend who could streamline my paperwork. A nice gentleman in a nice suit tried to convince me to consolidate at his bank. He almost got me to sign a temporary transfer while he worked out the details. I told him I don't transfer anything to anyone I can't outstare. Lila's mouth quirked. You told him that? I did, I said. And then I took a bus to a different firm, one run by a woman who let me bring a banana bread to our meeting and didn't talk down to me. I set up a living trust. I made you and Matthew co-trustees. Brian was a beneficiary contingent on behavior. There's a codicil with a conduct clause. You sign when you don't try to steal. Mom, Matthew whispered, overwhelmed, relieved, bruised. You trust me? I trust both of you, I said. And I trust that if either of you ever turns into the kind of adult who thinks a drugged signature is something to aim for, the other will remind you who you are. He swallowed hard and nodded, eyes bright. What about me? Lila asked softly. You get my piano, I said, and my grandmother's recipes, and every photograph where your father looks like he loved you, because he did. The rest you get in equal parts, with a clause that says if any child attempts to challenge or coerce, that child's share goes to the grandchildren. Lila blinked. You made a no contest clause? Yes, I said. I also made a clause that says anyone who employs a dropper forfeits his place at Thanksgiving. Lila laughed, one sharp exhale that let some oxygen back into the night. Then her face sobered. He'll say you're retaliating. He can say what he likes, I said. Tonight, he'll be answering questions someone else asks. The officers finished with Sabrina, who had finally realized that polished outrage is not a legal strategy. The woman officer returned to me with an evidence bag and a quiet nod. We've got the glasses, she said. We'll have them tested. Given the prescription in play, it's likely to show. The texts will help. So will the witnesses. Thank you, I said. We'll escort you home later if you like, she added. Or you can stay here if you feel safe. I feel safest where I can turn my own key, I said. Understood, she said. Sabrina, seeing control slip, tried one last play. Meredith, if you do this, she said, you'll break this family. It was already cracked, I said. Tonight I'm marking the fault line so no one pretends not to see it. Brian stood again. He looked at the officers, at me, at Nico quietly making sandwiches, because someone had to do something kind. He looked like a man standing on a shore watching a boat he thought he owned drift out without him. Mom, he said. Please. I hope, I said, steady as a metronome, you will someday be the man who would have told me the truth. If you become that man, call me. If you don't, let your sister call you. The woman officer stepped forward. Sir, she said to Brian, we're going to ask you to come with us to take a statement downtown. You are not under arrest at this moment. But that could change depending on lab results and witness statements. Do you understand? Brian nodded without understanding at all. Sabrina spun toward Ms. Collier. Do something, she said. Ms. Collier lifted her hands. I'm going to advise both of you not to say another word without counsel, she said. And then I'm leaving. Ethics handed me her card again, as if she wanted to make sure it didn't vanish nonsense ly into fairy tale air. I give discounts to grandmothers, she said, and this time the smallest smile warmed her face. Not charity, I said. Not charity, she agreed. Respect. Nico slid a sandwich across the counter toward me. Eat, he said. You've done a big thing. Your body thinks you ran a marathon. I took a bite because he was right, and because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in the aftermath of someone else's worst idea is to remind your body it's still allowed to be a body. As the officers arranged the logistics of statements and evidence, the room shifted around the new center gravity had found. Friends who had been watching from the living room began to help put lids on serving bowls and wrap leftovers. Someone went to the backyard to rein in the dog that knew too much. A child cried somewhere upstairs and was comforted by someone who didn't need to be told how. Jean returned from the garage, hands empty and righteous. Glasses are where you said, she murmured. Next to the lemon bars. Which, by the way, smell like salvation. They're dry enough to cut, I said, and she grinned. Sabrina, who had made glazed carrots like they were a proof of worth, stared at the lemon bars like they were a personal attack. We're not serving dessert. We are, I said. Because the children didn't get a choice about any of this. Lila clapped her hands once. You heard the woman, she said to the room. Dessert. Matthew moved without being asked, knives and plates, and the casual confidence of someone who repairs what he didn't break. Brian watched, baffled, as if the world had refused to pause while he recalibrated. He has always expected time to hold for him. Mom, he said again, a last try on an old key. Stop, I said, gentler than he deserved and kinder than I felt. Save your voice for the officer. He shut his mouth and turned it into a line. Nico's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and went a little pale, the color of someone who had just gotten an answer to a question he hadn't asked out loud. He looked at me, at Brian, at the door. He said to Milo. There's one more thing. I set down my sandwich. What kind of thing? The camera over the stove, he said. It backs up to the cloud for your channel. The auto-upload is on. It's set to share clips of notable moments to a private link you use for sponsors. It just pinged me because your Wi-Fi router is the same brand as mine and I get alerts when firmware updates push. It's not. I'm not in your network. It's just. I know what that alert means. Plainly, I said. If that camera got the dropper, he said, then someone else already has the clip. Maybe just you and your sponsor. Maybe more if the algorithm got confused. Sabrina's hands shot to her mouth like brakes. Oh no, she whispered, and it was the most honest thing she'd said all night. Brian looked like a man who has just realized that the cliff he thought was solid had been live-streaming his footprints all along. Who's the sponsor? Lila asked politely. Sabrina stared at the oven camera, betrayed by her own desire to monetize competence. A cookware brand, she whispered, appalled, calculating. We did a long-term partnership. They sometimes use snippets. I set it to auto-curate in case I forgot to send something in. Lila's eyebrows went up so high they almost left her face. Auto-curate, she repeated. Bold setting. Turn it off, Brian snapped. It's already uploaded, Nico said. You can delete it. But sometimes the internet is faster than regret. The male officer reappeared, holding 2 evidence bags and a comm that stuck. We're ready to go, he said. Sir? Ma'am? We'll need you both. Sabrina's eyes darted from the officer to the oven camera and back like a bird that has seen both a window and a cat. Can I just? No, the woman officer said. Sabrina swallowed and nodded and picked up a coat that wasn't warm enough for what was coming. MS. Hail, the woman officer added to me, we'll be in touch about the protective order. Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight? I have a home, I said. That I paid for. We'll follow up, she said, and I could tell she meant it. They led Brian and Sabrina toward the door. He paused at the threshold and turned, not to me, but to the room, the friends, the camera that might have seen more than anyone wanted it to. He looked like a man trying to decide whether to apologize to an audience or to himself. He did neither. He walked out. The door closed. It clicked the way truth does when it finds the right latch. Silence arrived in the kitchen like snowfall, soft, covering real. Meredith, Ms. Collier said after a beat, you will be contacted by someone from Golden Gardens within 48 hours to smooth things over. They will offer you a seminar, a discount, a sympathy call. Decline. I will, I said. And if you're willing, she added, give me the name of the woman who set up your trust. I have a client I'd like to send to her instead of to wolves. I gave her the name. She typed it into her phone with the efficiency of a person who understands that the smallest course corrections can keep ships from rocks. Ethics squeezed my shoulder, a gesture as rare and calibrated as a stamp. You did well, she said. And you did it without drinking. Thank you, I said. She left, spine straight, choices intact. The guests began to disperse. The ones who gossiped did it outside, where their hot breath turned into clouds that didn't hurt anyone. The ones who loved us loaded clean dishes into the dishwasher and left casseroles on the counter with notes that said, freeze me if you want. Nico made one last sandwich and wrapped it, then tucked the unused cash deeper into his bag and looked at me like he was waiting for permission to go back to his life. You saved me, I said to him. You saved yourself, he said. I just texted fast. Keep the cash, I said again. I will, he said. But I'll use it to cover the hours my uncle will lose when he refuses to cater for people like this again. That, I said, is revenge I can endorse. He grinned and slipped out the back, where the alley had opinions about fireworks. When the house finally settled, the people remaining were the ones who would be there when it mattered, Lila and Matthew and Jean and the child with the cat, who had decided to stay until the cat decided to leave, because that's how cats and children manage commitment. I wrapped lemon bars for the officers because sweetness should not have to wait for justice. I made tea because bitterness should have to wait for nothing. I sat at the island and sorted the cards I had collected, ethics, MS. Collier, and the little square of paper that smelled like ginger and warning, and I felt the tremor in my bones that comes not from fear, but from the release after bracing too long. And then my phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. You did it. I'm sorry I was part of any of it. If they come after me, I'll stand up. If you need me, I'm here. Before I could type thank you, another bubble appeared. Unknown number. Also, Check the oven cam archive. I think it tagged the dropper as a notable moment. Title auto-generated. You should see what it called it. I opened the app Sabrina had set to curate her life. There, in a folder labeled Moments, a clip had been algorithmically titled with the kind of brutal, unintentional honesty machines accidentally achieve. Birthday, son prepares special drink for mom. I stared at the words until they went out of focus, and then sharpened again. I hit save. I hit download. I turned off auto-curate because my life does not need an editor who thinks absurdity is content. Let's go home, Matthew said quietly. I'll drive behind you. Lila will ride with you. Jean will follow with the lemon bars because she will not be separated from them. She won't, Jean said. I stood, my knees a little stiff, my heart steadier than it had any right to be. We'll go, I said. But not yet. What else? Lila asked, eyes narrowing in the best way. I picked up the blue folder from the garage table and brought it back to the island. I opened it. I took out a pen. I wrote 3 sentences on a blank sheet of paper. I signed my name, neat as 6th grade. What is it? Matthew asked. A receipt, I said. For the moment he thought he owned. I folded it and slid it into the vintage watch box I'd wrapped for my son. I tied the ribbon again. I set it on the counter where he'd see it when he returned with a lawyer and a new idea of how the world worked. What does it say? Lila asked. It says, I told her, that I decline to be anyone's inheritance while I'm alive. The clock over the stove ticked its ordinary seconds like a miracle. The house breathed in, breathed out. And then the front door opened once more. Not Brian. Not Sabrina. Not the officers. A woman stepped in I had not met before, her coat unbuttoned, her hands empty. She had the look of someone who'd driven here without being invited and without being able to stop herself. I'm sorry, she said, breathless with purpose. I think I'm late. I'm Nico's aunt. The caterer. I just closed the truck. I hear there's a situation. There was, I said. It's being handled. She nodded, eyes scanning faces for damage. Good, she said. Then, before I go, I need to tell you something. It might matter. What is it? Lila asked, already back to recording because she knew a story when it knocked twice. The caterer looked at me, then at the oven camera, then at the bag Miss Collier had left, then at the blue folder I'd retied. When we were unloading earlier, she said, your son took a call in the garage. He didn't know I could hear. He told someone, if this doesn't work, we'll try plan B next week. She always comes to Sunday supper. If it takes a little more, it takes a little more. My hands went colder than the lemon bars. Plan B, Lila repeated, voice flat. Yes, the caterer said, apology in every syllable she hadn't said sooner. I didn't know what to do. I scolded my nephew for being nosy when he told me something felt wrong. I was wrong. He was right. Matthew's jaw set. Jean put the lemon bars down like she might use them to shoplift fate. What's plan B? Lila asked quietly. The caterer shook her head. I don't know. But the way he said it, it wasn't about paper. It was about time. I picked up my phone. I don't have a lot of patience for cliffhangers when the story is mine. The officers had barely cleared the driveway. They were still a block away in the cul-de-sac. I hit the number for the woman officer, and when she answered, I said the thing that would turn tonight from a bad idea into a charge sheet that might, if we were lucky, keep next Sunday from turning into an obituary. There's more, I said. She didn't say wait. She said, tell me. And I did, while Lila held the camera and Matthew stood ready and Jean moved to the door, and the oven small unblinking, I kept its record of a family learning, one late, necessary inch at a time, how to stop pretending this was normal. Outside, in the grove of curated trees, a siren sounded again, not frantic, not loud. Just enough to promise that the night wasn't finished unspooling and that some part of what needed to be done would be done. Plan B, the officer repeated. We'll need details. I have one, I said, because I did. Because the person who had warned me was still awake and still watching and still ready to choose the right side of the line now that he knew where it was. Nico's unknown number text came in while I spoke, as if he could hear what I was saying through a story skin. Unknown number. He asked me to come Sunday too. To help make things easy. I said yes so I could tell you. He said the word isn't drink. It's dinner. I looked at the lemon bars. I looked at the oven camera. I looked at my children. Then we'll make sure, I told the officer, that Sunday supper is the safest meal this house has ever hosted. There was a pause on the line, and then the kind of promise I had needed since 3:07 p.m. We'll be there, she said. And with that, the next chapter of the night stood up and stepped forward, its shoes dry, its back straight, a plan clicking into place like handcuffs I would not be the one to wear. At 6:58 p.m. on Sunday, I slid a casserole into an oven no one would ever eat and turned on every light in my house. The table was set, the door was unlocked, and the only thing we planned to serve was the truth. By then, the protective order paperwork was filed. It didn't forbid Brian from stepping on my property if invited for a controlled police operation. The woman officer, Diaz, called it a knock-and-talk with a net. 2 unmarked cars idled down the block. Jean sat at my kitchen island like a friendly boulder. Lila checked batteries. Matthew checked doors. Nico folded napkins and tried not to look like a young man who'd been asked to grow up too fast and had said yes anyway. At 7:03, Sabrina texted, "We'd like to bring the stuffed peppers you love." It would mean a lot. Nico, watching my screen over my shoulder with my permission, pointed to the timestamp and then to his own phone. Her message matched the line he'd sent me earlier. They said the word isn't drink. It's dinner. We won't eat anything they bring, Diaz said mildly. But let them offer. Who else knows? I asked. Diaz tilted her head toward the street. Enough. The doorbell rang at 7:11. I let it ring twice. Then I opened the door to my son and his wife carrying a glass baking dish under aluminum foil and a daisy bouquet so bright it looked like an apology posing for a photo. "Mom," Brian said, voice small in a way that would have twisted me yesterday. "We want to make things right." "Come in," I said. He stepped over the threshold as if the line were taller than it looked. Sabrina came next, smiling so hard it might have cracked if I breathed on it. "Kitchen?" she asked, lifting the dish. "Kitchen," I said, and led them past the framed photos on the hall wall, weddings, summer grills, a Christmas where the tree tilted and no one cared. In each one, Brian's smile looked like a promise. Tonight it looked like a receipt. He took in the lights, the set table, Jean stirring nothing at the stove, Lila with her camera, Matthew with his toolbox open like a habit. He saw Nico, and something like shame flickered and then hid. "It smells amazing," Sabrina said, looking at the oven where my decoy casserole warmed air and nothing else. "Peppers," she added, as if the word could own the room. "Leave yours on the counter," I said, sliding a trivet into place. "We'll plate together." Sabrina set down the dish and put her hand on the foil. "Let me just." "Not yet," I said. Brian cleared his throat. "Mom, about Thursday." "Friday," Lila corrected, kind in the way a surgeon is kind. "And we're recording again, for everyone's protection." Sabrina's eyes went to the oven camera and then to the small, black dot of the new one Lila had installed in the corner, the kind that stores video where lawyers can get it. "You don't need to record our apology," Brian said. "I do," I said. "Because I have learned you do not say the same thing when you are not being recorded." Diaz stepped into the doorway from the dining room, plainclothes, badge clipped at her belt, presence like a seat you didn't realize you wanted to sit in until it was there. "Evening," she said. "We'll keep this calm." Brian froze. Sabrina inhaled. "You invited the police to dinner?" Brian asked me, incredulous, as if we were in a sitcom and not a life. "I invited the truth," I said. "They happened to carry it in a notebook." Diaz nodded at the covered dish. "What's that?" "Stuffed peppers," Sabrina said. "Her favorite." "Lovely," Diaz said. "We'll keep them covered until we can tag and photograph." Sabrina blinked. "You're not serious." "I am," Diaz said. "Please step away from the counter." Sabrina let go of the foil. For a second I saw her rehearse a dozen versions of a conversation where she wins because she speaks first, and then I saw her drop them all because none would work here. Brian straightened. "This is ridiculous," he said. "We came to apologize." "Then do it," I said. He swallowed. "I'm sorry, Mom." "For what?" Lila asked. For the way I handled things," he said. You tried to drug your mother to push her into signing a will and a power of attorney that cut her other children out, Lila said. Say the words. Brian's mouth opened. Closed. The kitchen waited. The oven hummed. Somewhere, a neighbor's dog barked at a passing leaf. I'm sorry, he said again, smaller. You will have the rest of your life to get better at that, I said. Tonight is for facts. Sabrina looked at Diaz. We brought dinner, she said, as if that explained a concept like absolution. And you texted a young man to make it easy at 6:45 last Thursday, Diaz said, reading from her notes. And you purchased a prescription 2 days before that. And you scheduled a notary. And you hired an attorney who withdrew when she realized what you intended. And you called a second one. And you had an appointment sheet in the garage with my complainant's name spelled correctly in 3 places. Sabrina's eyes flicked to Brian as if she could hand him the bag and then walk briskly away from it. He didn't take it. Open the foil, Diaz said. Sabrina hesitated. Open it, Diaz repeated. She peeled it back slowly. The peppers glistened in their red and green rows, stuffed and sauced and ordinary. They smelled like memory and Sunday school potlucks. They smelled like comfort. They smelled like nothing at all, which is how danger would smell if it came to supper wearing pearls. Diaz didn't touch them. She took a photo. She slid the dish toward the edge of the counter and read the underside of the foil where a recipe would sometimes be written. There, in neat black marker, was a note that made my stomach go cold and steady all at once. No sugar in Mom's portion. She'll notice. Diaz lifted the foil so Brian could read it. He skimmed, tried to laugh, didn't. What does that mean? Diaz asked Sabrina. It means she's picky, Sabrina said evenly. It means she notices when things change. It means someone planned to prepare 2 different portions, Diaz said. It means nothing, Sabrina said. Diaz looked at Nico. You have the texts, she asked. He pulled the prepaid phone from his pocket and handed it over. Diaz read, eyes flat with the patience of someone who has learned to sit still until the lie runs out of road. She nodded once, tucked the phone away, and made a small hand signal toward the hallway. One of the unmarked officers stepped in with a paper evidence bag. Brian watched the bag like a man watching the end of something he thought he could still bargain with. This is insane, he said. You're making supper into a crime scene. You did that, I said. Matthew's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and swallowed. Mom, he said, voice careful. The oven sponsor emailed. They flagged the clip automatically and asked if it was intended content. They froze distribution. They're concerned. Good, I said. Let them be. Sabrina stepped closer to me, palms up, palms bare. Meredith, she said, using my name as if it were currency. We all got scared. We made a bad plan. But we're family. The last plan you made for me included a dropper, I said. This one includes dinner. I'm not in the market for a third. Diaz's partner, Nguyen, came in from the back door with a small case. He wore the expression of a man who knows how to be boring until it's time not to be. He set the case on the counter, opened it, and took out labeled swabs and vials. He did not narrate. He did not look at me for permission. He had it all ready. Ma'am, Diaz said to me quietly, if you'd like to step into the dining room, we can continue this where you can sit. I'll stand, I said. I want to see what's in my kitchen. Gwen swabbed. He sealed. He labeled. He did not name. Even if he could, we wouldn't say it here. This is still a story for people who need to watch to the end. While the officers worked, Miss Collier knocked on the doorframe. She looked different in my home, smaller somehow, as if something about the room refused to give her the angles she usually worked. I'm not here for them, she said, nodding at Brian and Sabrina. I'm here with a file. What file? Lila asked. She lifted a manila folder. Golden Gardens, she said. Their intake forms. Their scripts. A list of families they contacted without permission after initial consults. I quit this morning. I brought receipts. Diaz's eyebrows rose. You're dropping this here? I am, Miss Collier said. Consider it an amends. Diaz took the file, flipped through, and whistled under her breath. These are helpful. I prefer damning, Miss Collier said, with a smile that contained no joy. With luck, it keeps someone else's mother from having to set her own trap. Sabrina looked like a person watching scaffolding collapse on a building she assumed would always be taller than other people's houses. Brian looked at me and spoke softly, the way people speak when they try to go under the sound of the room. "I was going to stop," he said. "I was going to come tonight and say we'd hurt you and mean it." "You came tonight with peppers and Plan B," I said. "You came with a note about portioning. You came with a story you hoped would land before the facts did." He closed his eyes. Maybe he prayed. Maybe he counted. When he opened them, he looked older in a way that had nothing to do with years. Diaz finished photographing the dish and covered it again. "Here's how this goes," she said gently. "We'll take the food. We'll take your statements again. We'll compare the new texts to the old. We'll review Thursday's clip. Then we'll talk to a judge." Sabrina made a final grab for control. "You can't prove intent," she said, voice brittle. "You can't know what's in my head." "No one needs to," Diaz said. "They just need to know what was in the plan." Gwyn zipped the case and nodded. "Done." Diaz glanced at me. I nodded back. "We're finished here," she said. "For tonight." Brian exhaled. He thought that was mercy. It was just punctuation. As they led Brian and Sabrina out, Diaz paused by the buffet and tapped the blue watch box I'd left there after Friday. "What's this?" she asked. "A present," I said. "I'm leaving it for him." "Now?" Lila asked, startled. "Now," I said. "In case he ever decides to be someone who can carry it." "What's in it?" Jean asked. "My father's watch," I said. "And a note." Diaz looked at me curious. "It says," I told her, "do not build your life on shortcuts and expect it to arrive on time." Diaz's mouth twitched. "That's better than anything I put in a report," she said. When the door closed behind them, the house sagged in that small, secret way buildings do when lots of people leave at once. The oven hummed. The casserole that was a prop kept pretending to be supper. Nico let his shoulders drop and then straightened them again. "Tea?" Jean asked. "Yes," I said. "Please." We drank in the bright kitchen, and for the first time since the unknown number buzzed on Friday, I felt the kind of tired that means your body believes it is safe enough to rest later. "Now what?" Matthew asked. "Now," I said, "we do the unglamorous part. We hold the line. We go to appointments. We answer calls. We say no with our full chest. We let the system do the part we can't do." "And Brian?" Lila asked carefully. "He has two roads," I said. "One toward a man who tells the truth first, because it hurts less than lying later. One toward a stranger I won't let in my house." "Will you forgive him?" Jean asked. "If he becomes the first man," I said. "Forgiveness is a door. He needs to build the steps up to it." The week that followed was dull in the way that matters. Statements. Copies. Password changes. A visit from the Oven sponsor's legal team, who handled the clip with care and sent me an edible arrangement to say they were sorry their algorithm had a sense of irony. A call from the attorney who set up my trust. She reviewed my no contest clause and told me it was sturdy enough to stand on. Ms. Collier sent updates on Golden Gardens. The state opened an inquiry. Ethics notarized a small stack of updates I wanted for my peace of mind. Nico's uncle took him off the catering schedule for a few days with pay. People acted like people. The machine of accountability turned. At the preliminary hearing, I wore navy and brought lemon bars in a tin for the courthouse staff because sweetness doesn't become less necessary when life gets sour. Brian looked at the floor a lot. Sabrina stared at the opposite wall like it owed her a view. Their lawyer asked the judge for patience. The judge had patience for corrections. He had none for it was just to make it easy. Lila squeezed my hand. Matthew carried my folder. Jean found the best seats because she always did. Miss Collier sat 2 rows back, a civilian in her own story now, and didn't try to give advice she wasn't asked to give. Diaz nodded at me when the hearing ended, a small acknowledgement from one woman to another that sometimes the difference between a tragedy and a cautionary tale is a few stubborn decisions in a row. The charges didn't turn anyone into a villain in a movie. They turned into obligations, court dates, classes, evaluations, the slow and maddening work of consequences. Golden Gardens got a visit from people who ask hard questions. It turned out we were not the first family they had tried to sell a shortcut to. A month later, Brian showed up to community service at a senior center on the south side. He distributed bingo cards and learned how long a conversation can be when you don't try to win it. He called me once from a bench outside, not to ask for money or a signature or a rescue, but to ask what brand of ginger cookies I used to buy when he was small. I told him. I did not invite him over. Calls can be doors too. Sabrina's lawyer called Lila, not me. That was a good sign in the way of fever breaking is a good sign. It doesn't mean you run a marathon. It means you keep sipping water. Sabrina pled to charges that fit what she did. She sent me a letter that said the right things in the wrong handwriting. I filed it in a drawer labeled later. As for me, I threw myself a birthday do-over at the end of the month. We called it 70 practice round. We invited only people who would have told me the truth on Friday if they had known it. Nico's uncle catered at a discount and cried when everyone clapped for him. I made a speech that did not make a speech out of my pain. I am not a lesson, I said into my living room full of faces that looked like home. I am a person who refused to be anyone's inheritance while I'm alive. If you take anything from this, let it be that you are allowed to be inconvenient when someone wants to make your life easier for their benefit. The grandkids ran around with pennants Lila made that said Team Meredith. My neighbor played old songs on my piano until the cat lay under it like a furry pedal. We put the oven camera on a shelf facing the wall because I didn't want even a blinking eye watching us eat. Trust is a living thing. It needs quiet. Later, when the house had emptied and the dishwasher hummed like a satisfied animal, I sat by the window with my tea and the box with my father's watch. I opened it and read the note I had written and not yet given. Do not build your life on shortcuts and expect it to arrive on time. I folded it, slid it back under the watch, and closed the lid. I didn't know when I would give it to Brian. Maybe at a bench. Maybe at a holiday where we pass rolls and not papers. Maybe never. Hope is a light you can keep lit without leaving the porch door unlocked. Before bed, I checked the locks and then my phone. A text waited from the unknown number that had begun this story. It did not say you will be. It said, glad you were. I typed back, me too. And, because I am a bookkeeper at heart and like all things balanced, I added one more line, one that felt like a signature under a ledger that finally made sense. He didn't drink what he poured for me. I didn't sign what he set in front of me. That's the whole math. The house settled. The night shifted to its quieter gears. In the distance, somewhere beyond the grove, a siren sounded and then faded, which is what justice sounds like when it is not a headline but a habit. I turned out the kitchen lights one by one, the way I've always done. On the counter, the empty trivet sat like a small, solid fact. In the oven, a cold casserole waited for a future that would never come. I went to bed in a house that was mine. I slept. And in the morning, I woke up 69, vexingly alive, with ginger in the cupboard and lemon bars cooling on a rack, ready to be cut into neat squares and handed out to anyone who came by with clean hands to help me carry whatever came next.